All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to Talkin Investing. George, how are you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really that sad, but I own XRP, so.
Well, it was a good week to own XRP.
Yeah, that's, it's funny is like, it balances itself out over time. This has been a brutal week, though, let's be honest.
This has been one of the biggest roller coaster weeks of all time, so that's definitely what we're going to talk about today. There's a few things going on in the Bitcoin miner universe. I'm waiting for CleanSpark imminently to put out their financial results. Yesterday, they postponed. I think they got beat up today a little bit as a result of that, but they ended up postponing by one day. That should be happening. Their conference is in 10 minutes, their conference call, so I will listen to that later, but I do want to look live on the stream when they should put out their press release, and we can take a look at how they did. I don't necessarily expect any surprises in there, but you never know until you look, so we'll be doing that. And we'll talk about the ups and downs. We had some of the worst days of all time and some of the best days in years. So we'll look at both of those. Between Friday of last week, Monday of this week, and Thursday of this week, we had one of those was one of the best days in history, and one of those was one of the worst days. So we've been all over the place. I also got some charts that I'm updating. We'll look at the Bitcoin miners year to date. We're going to look at all the monthly production. They've all reported last month. So we'll take a look at July's production reports and see how everybody did from a production standpoint. So there's an awful lot to go through. And welcome everybody. Yes.
The CleanSpark delayed. Could it just be, I mean, let's be honest, could it just be another game?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, the answer to that is always potentially yes. The market manipulation is, if you look, or, you can suspect that it's around every corner. There's no doubt. Right. And, then they left us hanging for a very short period of time and announced, oh, they're going to do it one day later. I will talk more about that because it really ticks me off. And I feel like they dropped the ball, and it's not a long-term thing. It's not really that important, but I do think we got beat up today. Midway, who is a member, thank you very much for the super chat. Midway said, I bought lots more Iron shares this week in the low sevens. I think Iron is the most undervalued stock because they'll have enough megawatts to reach 56 exahash next year, yet their market cap is just $1.4 billion. Yeah, so remember at one point, not too long ago, and thanks again, Midway, for being a member and for the super chat. Just not too long ago, Iron's market cap passed Riot's market cap. It was, in the hot, 2.7 billion or 2.8 billion. Now it's cut in half. It's actually cut in more than half. So, is this a great buying opportunity? I mean, we might look back, and Iron's not the only one. So we'll do some polls and ask you guys what you think is the most undervalued.
Sorry, Barry.
I really feel like there's a lot out there that is at a big bargain, but I understand, how long can we wait? This has been an exhausting process. Yes.
I am getting a mortgage, and I'm going all in. I am going to get another 6 figures and put it in some Bitcoin miners.
That's how committed you are.
This is not financial advice, and I'm down huge.
Well,
I'm down more money than I even thought I had.
And you're not alone. Everybody, particularly if you're measuring from where you were 3 months ago or 4 months ago or 5 months ago, it can be extremely frustrating, especially since things were rolling for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. It seemed like we were off to the races, and we have just gotten and a lot of people have been flushed out. So, congratulations. I do want to take a second and ask everybody, if you could please smash the like button. Let's see if I can get that up there. We have 16 likes. We're going for 100 likes. Last week, we got 200 likes, so we really would appreciate it. It does help the stream a lot in real time, so we could use all the help we can get. George and I feel like they're suppressing our stream, but
Well,
you know.
I agree. You do you. I wouldn't follow anything I say or do. Trust me, because I could lose it all. I could lose every single penny that I put in. I'm not going to put it all in one Bitcoin miner or one Bitcoin company. You know, in the just there, I'm spreading it everywhere. I just do. To me, there's a lot of bargains out there right now.
So are you going to put it between Bitcoin miners, some into Bitcoin, some into other cryptocurrencies, or is this going to be Bitcoin miner focused, just diversified amongst the miners?
I am going to diversify, and I'm also at the same time taking out insurance every single month with options.
So you're going to buy some puts and make sure, you know, disaster doesn't strike. And, you know, so these are a lot of good strategies. And yes, anybody that says don't do that, none of this is financial advice. We all have very different, unique financial circumstances and risk tolerances, et cetera, et cetera. So please, we always talk about, and the last piece that I will say right off the bat that we always talk about, for those of you in this space, you know, the Bitcoin miners are extremely volatile. I mean, this is unbelievable, brutal volatility. I did take a screenshot of yesterday's big board for the Bitcoin miners. I missed Wednesday's. Wednesday was a train wreck. And Thursday was phenomenal. Now, today, you'll see up on the screen, we were almost red across the board, but you know, not gigantic moves. Other than CleanSpark got beat up, down 6.3%, BitDeer down over 6%, Cypher down 6%, but a lot of these were down. Marathon and Riot were down 1% all day, and then they made a move at the end of the day to be down, 2% and 2.77%. TerraWolf 2.3%. Bitfarms down 1.3%. So it was hanging around. I thought maybe Bitfarms would flip green because really this little area right here, this was the end of the day. So we had a nice pump into the end of the day for Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin miners were selling off. As is so often the case with the equities, they sell off, particularly at the very end of the day. If the entire Friday isn't a sell-off, usually the last half an hour, there is a sell-off or a pullback off of the highs. In this instance, everything was already red and it got a little bit more red as it went along. So let's
Tom, when Bitcoin was at 61,000, I don't know, a month ago, was it about a month ago, 2 weeks ago? Where was everybody? Did you do that comparison or no?
What do you mean?
When Bitcoin was at 61, was trading at 61,000.
Right, which we're back to right now.
Right. So where was, let's say, Riot? Where was CleanSpark? Where was Marathon? Where was
apples to apples? We'll go through those charts. They're down. They're all down. Right.
What I'm trying to say is, what's different now than before?
Right. So why would they be down today versus before? Now, for some of these, Marathon, Riot, Bitfarms, although Bitfarms reported earnings yesterday, we're going to go through that. The market clearly loved Bitfarms earnings. I think the market was fairly neutral on Marathon and Riot earnings. So this pullback on Marathon and Riot was not due to their earnings reports. And most have not yet reported earnings because, Marathon and Riot, they did not go down disproportionate to the rest of the group. In fact, they may have fared even a little better, although, they're both at numbers I really did not think we would see. I did buy, I will tell you, so I bought a little bit this week. And those are the two I bought, Marathon and Riot. I'm not saying those are the two best stocks. Those are not my two largest positions, but I did add to those two positions. I just felt like, some of these numbers, and they're not alone. So I'll just, for me, CleanSpark's my biggest position. So even though I think maybe CleanSpark might be an unbelievable bargain, Bitfarms was down under $2. It was trading with a one handle, and that's my second biggest position. So I'm not adding to my largest and second largest position, especially when, I was still up very big in those two positions. So conversely, I've been red in Riot all along. Actually, I did get green at one point, and it's pulled back dramatically since then. So I've been red for months and months and months in Riot. And Marathon got to the point where I went red on my Marathon. So to me, that was good. I added at $15 and change for Marathon, in the high 15s, like $15.70 something cents. But I never ever thought I'd see Marathon in the 15s again. And by the way, that doesn't mean it won't go lower. We've played this game. We know, this can go. This can go on. And I do expect, I said on the members only live stream on Tuesday, I think we're in for a little bit of the long haul here with the Bitcoin miners. I think Bitcoin's going to move first. I think the miners are going to be more stubborn. And that doesn't mean there won't be phenomenal days. In fact, in between the time I said that on Tuesday, we had Thursday, which was one of the great days of the year for the Bitcoin miners. But it's little consolation when they're, have pulled back so dramatically. I'll go to the year.
Midway just said that CleanSpark reported a $1.03 per share loss.
So we got to dig into that. I was expecting, and again, we talked about this on the members only stream, and I've been talking about this for weeks. The Bitcoin miners that hodl, CleanSpark has the fourth largest hodl position. They have over 6,000 Bitcoin. Based on the new accounting policies, the price of Bitcoin at June 30th was significantly lower than it was at March 31st. So the companies, all of these companies have taken a massive, massive hit to this quarter's financial statement. So what we need to do, and we'll go look at the press release, we need to strip that out, and we'll go look at that next. I want to see, did they make money? Were they net positive EBITDA? We got to dig a little deeper, but I will tell you, with 6,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet, I'm sure we're going to see a big, big part of that loss was just their write down in their Bitcoin. And go ahead, George.
I echo what Edmund says. I'm allocated in XRP, other cryptos, and BTC as well. This is why you don't stay in one sector. You have to allocate your risk across multiple industries.
Right. Even, and even inside of the same industry, if you're, a lot of us here are very heavy into Bitcoin miners. So I try to, I'm in 5 different Bitcoin miners because it's too scary. If you're the more concentrated your risk, the higher your risk. The more concentrated your investments, the higher your risk is overall. So let's see. Let's just go to quickly.
Tom, when do I panic? By the way.
I mean,
by the way, I had a floor, and I'm probably almost 30% lower than the floor that I had. By the way.
You've gone below your floor.
Right. If my wife knew, she'd shoot me. Let's put it this way. I had a balance. I took out a mortgage to buy this, little things and all that. And that balance went below what that mortgage balance is. It's been doing really good until just this last week where I got wrecked. I mean, just absolutely bitch slapped out of me.
Well, starting last Friday, remember last Friday was a train wreck, and right. Monday was a train wreck, and I'm looking for, is this, okay, I think here we go. Okay, so should we take a minute? Let's take a minute. First, I will ask everybody once again, if you just joined us, if you would be so kind as to smash the like button. We're at 38 likes. We're going for 100 likes. It does help the stream out in real time. I'm going to spend a little bit of time now. I don't want to spend the whole stream, but let's go through because this is hot off the presses. Let's just take a quick overview and see what CleanSpark reported. I will tell you, I think for all of the Bitcoin miners that we follow, I think the second quarter is going to be the toughest quarter, and I should more specifically say the 3 months ended June 30th, 2024, because that is a different quarter for each company. For CleanSpark, you can see it's the third quarter because they don't have a calendar year. But for the quarter that they're reporting on that just ended June 30th, that is the quarter that the halving occurred in. That's the quarter that Bitcoin was down quarter over quarter in a big way, so they all have to take big write-offs. So you can see third quarter revenue was $104 million, net loss of $236 million, but adjusted EBITDA of only negative $12 million. So very close to break even here. And that's one of the big numbers that I'm looking for. So that's encouraging. Of course, we need to dig deeper and figure out exactly what's inside there. Revenue growth, 129% year over year. So that's impressive because remember, most of this quarter was after the halving. So even with the halving, getting half the rewards, they grew revenue 129% year over year. And we know that, CleanSpark has had massive, massive growth. Partnered with Coinbase for a $50 million line of credit. To me, that's almost more of a token thing to do than $50 million is very little money to CleanSpark. It's a lot of money, I understand, but versus, all things considered, that's a small line of credit. But it is starting to show, and I did read a separate article today. I didn't bring it up because I think we're real early, so it's not one of the ones I'm going to go through later. But they're starting to talk about Bitcoin as, collateralizing loans and people lending money against Bitcoin. So I think we're in the very early days of that. I do think it's high risk. I think the loan to value that people are going to be willing to extend credit on, is going to be very low versus other traditional assets. But we're back in a world. We were in that world, in 2021. Companies were lending money, particularly to the Bitcoin miners, against their Bitcoin. And a lot of them got burned on that. The real Gary Gensler taps for CleanSpark. It's dead.
All right.
Thanks, Fred. More dilution. So I don't know if he's saying CleanSpark's dead or if he's saying Fred from Marathon, if Marathon's dead. I do not think CleanSpark is dead. I think CleanSpark is, for me, I think CleanSpark is doing very well. Not their stock. Obviously, their stock is not doing well at all. But, their stock had a vicious, vicious run up. So, it's had a big pullback. It is still in the green for the year. Let's go take a look at some year-to-date numbers quickly. And then we'll come back and dig into this a little deeper. So this is as of the end of today. So this is year-to-date for the now 12 Bitcoin miners that we're following. We were following 19 Bitcoin miners. As you guys know, we knocked the 7 nano/micro caps out of here. But look, there was a point where a lot of these companies were significantly outperforming Bitcoin. Well, all of a sudden, that has reversed. We only have Core Scientific and TeraWulf that are outperforming Bitcoin. Bitcoin's still up 45% on the year. So for as much as this feels like a rough run with Bitcoin, and the last 5 months have been, but year to date, we're up 45%. But, here's CleanSpark. They're up 4% year to date. At one point, they were up, I think 60% year to date. So they've pulled way back off of that. Everybody else is in the red. I mean, look at Riot down here. For those of us holding Riot, I am one of those people. We're down 48% in 2024 year to date. So, we're in the beginning of August here, 7 months and 1 week into the year. My Riot position's almost cut in half. And when I say mine, anybody holding Riot, their position has been cut in half. So if you hold Riot, you've gotten wrecked this year. If you hold Hive, you've gotten beaten up. Marathon is the largest market cap. They're the largest by production. They have the most exahash. They're down 28% on the year. Bit Digital, 27%. I mean, there's some ugly numbers here. And I will tell you, in a year where Bitcoin's up 45%, even if you're looking at Iris Energy and CleanSpark, and at one point, for about 2 full months, CleanSpark and Iris Energy were the 2 best performing Bitcoin mining stocks. And they were and it wasn't even close. CleanSpark, for about the first 3 months of the year, was 50 points ahead of the next closest Bitcoin miner as far as their performance for the year goes. And now all of a sudden you can see there's a couple that have way past them. So it's been tough holding these companies. If you held, if 3 months ago or 2 months ago even, you had Iris and CleanSpark, and they were the two best performing Bitcoin miners. And now all of a sudden, look where they are. That's pretty rough. So, I hold Iris, or Iron as they now want to be called. I hold CleanSpark. So that's, although it's up, I've been beaten up on that. I hold Riot. I've been beaten up on that. I hold Marathon. I've been beaten up on that. And I hold Bitfarms. And again, none of this is financial advice. I'm just telling you the ones that I happen to own. You guys should all do you. And I know there's in this group, there's fans of all of these companies and there's detractors of every single one of these companies. So, investing is a very individual thing. If I pick a company right now, I can tell you there'll be some people on here that think it's the worst Bitcoin miner out there, and there'll be others that think it's the best. So that's just how investing goes. But this year to date thing is, and from, I believe it's going to be, maybe another 2 months before we see significant movement in this. Now, I'll take a timeout and show you something because, inside of this, which may be, I don't want to say depressing, but a little discouraging, we do get, I'll try and blow this up a little so it's more visible. This is yesterday. So this was what the Bitcoin miners did yesterday. Marathon up 9.8%. CleanSpark up 10%. Riot up 8.5%. Iris Energy up 12.4%. Core Scientific was the only lagger. There was a reason for that. They went ballistic the day before on a press release and earnings the day before that. TeraWolf up 16%. BitDeer up 10%. HUT 11%. Cypher 11%. Bitfarms was up 22%. Again, earnings, I think the market liked their earnings. Hive up 13%, Bit Digital up 18%. So those are the ones that we follow. The nano caps are down below that, but here's a day where, almost everything was up double digits, some pushing 20% or over 20%. So, when I say it's going to be 2 months of pain, we're going to get days like this. But for every day like this, on Wednesday was awful. It was red straight across the board. There was a bunch of double digit red. I will tell you, if you take the 2 days put together, most of these Bitcoin miners are net positive. Even though Wednesday was a train wreck, what happened here Thursday made up for it for most of the Bitcoin miners. And then today we got a pullback for most of them. We'll go take a look, not as drastic, but there were some 6%. CleanSpark was down 6%, BitDeer was down 6%, Cypher was down 6%. So there was some that had a tough day. Core Scientific was down 4%. But you can see Core Scientific, if we go back to where we just were, they're still the number one performing stock on the year. And Core Scientific, we'll go to that next. And then we'll get back to CleanSpark that just released their earnings. So Robert Anderson said, CleanSpark's getting rid of rigs more than 22 joules per terahash. So that's crazy because 22 joules, most companies are trying to target getting under 25 joules per terahash in total. So, it looks like CleanSpark's even going a step beyond that. And that is going to continue to get more and more competitive. So these new machines are more and more efficient. So I think that it looks like CleanSpark took a big write-off on accelerated depreciation on machines that they retired. They also took a big write-off on, or write down on their adjustment to Bitcoin's fair value at June 30th. So, but just remember, if you think Bitcoin's going to do what it's going to do, all these companies had to mark Bitcoin down to, what was it, like 58? Let's take a look.
And hey, Tom, when you got a second, can you do a poll? Because somebody in here, this guy, DDDD, guess he didn't watch last week. All these YouTubers will promote and keep you, these BTC will go up, and they're really telling you the truth that this is not a good investment thesis. Everybody on this stream that watches us last Friday remembers a guy who said that Bitcoin was going below $50,000.
That's right. If you were not here with us last week, George made it a point several times to say that he thought Bitcoin was going to have a tough run. immediately in the short term, under 50,000.
So everybody can, and I mean, I get hate for this every week. And by the way, Sour, I'm eating cookies. I need some sugar. But I really want to know where people think Bitcoin's going. I really want to know where,
what time frame? What time frame?
Let's say end of September. I mean, are we done? Did we change our mind? Did Bitcoin all of a sudden? And obviously, what's also DDDD? You might want to go look at the return on your investment on Bitcoin, by the way. It all depends on when you got in. And it all depends on what you do. I'm telling you right now, I had this conversation last night, and I have to say it. I'm sorry. You know what? We're talking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't even matter. What matters is Satoshis. And if you own one Bitcoin, you own 100 million Satoshis. Satoshis is what matters. When we flip and we start talking about the price of Satoshis, then Bitcoin will be so unreachable that people will miss the opportunity. Will that happen? Absolutely. It's going to happen. I don't know when. I'm not saying it happens tomorrow, next week, or even next year. But at some point in time, Bitcoin is going to be traded in Satoshis, and it's going to freaking fly.
So you're looking at long-term scenarios like Michael Saylor, who talked about Bitcoin getting, to $40 million per Bitcoin in 4045. I would think it was like 43 or 49 million dollars was his bull case. Now he gave a bull case, a target price, but I think 13 million was even his standard case scenario. That's per Bitcoin. So in other words, to George's point, people aren't going to be going out and buying a Bitcoin anymore. And
they're going to be going out and buying Satoshis. You're going to get paid in Satoshis. And
most people don't go out and buy a Bitcoin right now either. So, it's already to the point where for most people, they're not going to jump out and spend $60,000. That's out of, for most people, that's out of the range of what they're willing to or able to invest.
Yeah, risk. Yeah, I mean, it's a big risk.
So, all right, let's do a poll. Let's take a look at this.
End of September. That gives us how many weeks?
Where will Bitcoin be by September 30th? That's just under 2 months. Let's call it 7 weeks. So I went under 60,000 to 70,000, 70,000 to 80,000, or over 80,000. So where do people think? If you're on a device and you can vote, let's vote. Let's kind of get a consensus here and see what everybody is thinking. Where's sentiment at? And things have changed.
My poll would have been a little bit more conservative than Tom's, but
well, I've got under 60, so I mean, we can do another one if that wins. We can see. We'll go lower.
If that wins, you're right. Sorry.
And Seeker said, when will Mara be viewed as the next MicroStrategy? Currently, HODL is above 21,000. So Marathon, more than anything, is, in the quarters where Bitcoin goes down. And I was looking, here, where's June 30th? So that was actually a green candle. So I think that they would have to use this day, even though that's a Sunday. So Bitcoin was at around 62,000. But at March 31st, where is that? So Bitcoin was at 71,000. So, these companies had to take a big write down per Bitcoin. So let's say Bitcoin, ends up at the end of the year, at 100,000 or 120,000 or 150,000. Companies like Marathon, if they own 25,000 Bitcoin, they may get a markup, of $50,000 per Bitcoin that they get to record for financial purposes. So, that's $1 billion, right? Am I doing that right?
Something like that.
Yeah, that's $1,250,000,000. So, that's the potential for some of these companies. Now, obviously, Marathon has the largest stack out of any Bitcoin miner. MicroStrategy has multiples more than that. I think they're somewhere around 230,000. But, Riot has a stack that will probably be larger than 10,000 by the end of the year. CleanSpark, is approaching 7,000, I think. And, there's still HUT out there that had, at last count, 9,000 Bitcoin. So there's some companies with big stacks. There's a few other companies in the 2,000 range that are trying to grow, so there's going to be, it's a double whammy. As Bitcoin goes, depending on which direction Bitcoin goes in. As Bitcoin goes down, you got to take that right down. Plus, you make less money every time you mine a Bitcoin. In addition to that, in this quarter, you got another whammy because your reward got cut in half. So that's why I say these second quarter numbers are going to be the most difficult numbers. I think by the end of the third quarter, it's going to look significantly better. And then by the end of the fourth quarter, I think we're really going to be rolling. That's my personal opinion, not financial advice. Edmund saying CleanSpark at 22.3 exahash. Midway saying the good times haven't even started yet. So that is true. I mean, clearly for the Bitcoin miners, the good times are ahead. But even for Bitcoin, you can see, we got off to the races. We hit a new all-time high prior to the halving. That's never happened before. That was clearly due to the ETFs. So we got a little boost. But, from the top until now, we're still down about 18%. And, just this week, just Monday morning, this pullback in total was 33% from the top to the bottom. So this is the biggest pullback we've had in the last 20 months. This was the fifth pullback, and this one is now the largest. And we don't know. We don't know. Was that the bottom?
So we never even talked about this. How much money did everybody on Monday? What was that whole thing? Financial meltdown in the stock market? Did that include crypto too, or no?
That was the equity markets. So you're talking about the fact that essentially on Monday, retail investors sold. It was one of their largest selling days. This, according to JP Morgan, one of their largest selling days of the last 12 months. Conversely, institutions, it was one of their largest buying days. So, that's so typical of what happens here. And that's how retail investors get burned. And I'm not criticizing retail investors. I will tell you, I mean, coming off of a Friday, which was a train wreck, and then Monday, which was even worse, I understand a lot of people hit their stop losses. A lot of people just hit their pain threshold and they just leave. Institutions, with the amount of money that they have, and they can wait for that and just come in and jump in and buy, which they did. They had a 2.9, I believe, standard deviations above their normal buying, which puts it in the top 0.3 buying days of the year for them. Again, that was according to something JP Morgan put out, I believe.
That's insane.
So that's what happens. And I want to look at a chart, because this, whenever we see this, I'm kicking myself. I did some modest dollar cost averaging in this week, including on Monday when we were, flushing out. And, to a certain extent, I'll say, okay, maybe I did the right thing, because, modest dollar cost averaging in is my plan. But I'm going to show you a chart that told us everything we needed to know. Monday was the biggest buying opportunity. This is the volatility index. So if everybody can see this, this is Monday. Look at this. So the volatility index, you'll see I have a red line at around $12.68. That's where this thing hangs out. This candle right here, this was the third highest volatility in the history of the volatility index. Yes, this Monday of this week was the third highest volatility in history. So that was not just a volatile day. That was pure panic. One of the biggest panic days in the history of the stock market. And what surprises me is on last Friday's live stream, 1 week ago today, I said that's when the jobs report came out. And the jobs report was a miss. Unemployment was 4.3%. It was expected to be 4.1%. And the panic was on. There was a gigantic sell-off on Friday. I said at the end of the day on Friday, I felt like that was a gigantic overreaction. And you can see the volatility index popped up on Friday, from 20 to, 30. So that was a giant leap in one day. But that was nothing. Monday was multiples worse than that. So that was back-to-back days of panic. And, some of this stuff is FUD and it doesn't mean it's not true. It just means the effects of it get exaggerated. And I'm going to switch topics for a minute to something real quick because I said this and it just everybody's got to take a deep breath, and retail investors have a very hard time doing that. And institutions, it's built into their bloodstream. Like they see this and they got, also they're trading on algorithms. It's, the people at the trading desks, it's not their money. So it's a lot easier for them to look at this and go, wow, you know what? It's time, whatever money we got, it's time to put it to work. Time to leverage up, time to do whatever it takes because this is the third worst day, ever. This rivals, the 2008 financial crisis and then the pandemic were the other two times we had a spike like this on the VIX. This just doesn't happen. This is an unbelievable, and you can see if I go back, I've got a line at 35. 35 is considered extreme volatility, and you can see we've bounced off of that from time to time over the years. Now, here's that spike back in, this was one of the ones that was worse. Back in the pandemic, we had a day that was, even much worse than this. But these are rare. This line is the halving, by the way, right here. So this was a gigantic signal. And then let me see if I can find this. I never heard so much talk about something. Here we go. Bitcoin drops 15% against Japanese yen, outpaced declines versus US dollars as yen carry trade unwind. So all of a sudden, nobody's ever, tell me one person, be honest with yourself. Tell me one person that's talked about the yen carry trade ever, not recently, ever. All of a sudden, this was the most important thing in the entire history of the entire financial market. And it was the unwinding of this carry trade was going to crash markets forever. And there was no end in sight. And we're a few days later and this is over. It's done. This is done. You'll never hear anybody talk about this again. And Japan also did come out. So this started by Japan raising rates 0.25%, 25 basis points. And so everybody thought, well, this is going to unwind this whole trade. It's the end of the world. And so the first thing that happened is Japan subsequently came out and said, we're not going to do any more rate hikes. So that did quell the fears a little bit, but this was never, in my opinion, and I'm sure there's going to be some of you that vigorously disagree with me. This was the ultimate example of FUD to me. And this is one of the things to understand about FUD. This story's not fake. There was a yen carry trade that was going to unwind. It's real. It just wasn't the end of the world. This wasn't the, $50 trillion event that everybody thought it was going to be. So you got to take everything with a grain of salt. And the same thing with the jobs report, just a few days earlier than this. We got the jobs report on Friday. Okay, unemployment was at 4.3. We thought it was going to be at 4.1. All of a sudden, that sent the everybody thought that we're going to have emergency rate cuts. They're going to cut rates 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. We're going to get 125 basis points, 150 basis points by the end of the year. Well, that's already backed way off. It's only 1 week later, and that is settling down to what I think is a little more realistic scenario. So these are just some of the things to be careful of. And this is natural. And, we get caught up in this. And this is why, to George's point, this is why investors got wiped out on Monday. We started this conversation by George mentioning, what happened on Monday when retail investors, it was abandoned ship. They left the market. And at the same time, institutions had one of their biggest buying days of the year. So, and it's
Tom, do you think this is a dead cat bounce for the market?
I don't think that. And that doesn't mean I think that we're going to the moon. I do think we're going to start to get some rotation of money. So, some of the things that were working may not work as well going forward. And some of the things that haven't worked for a long time, I think are going to start to be better trades. Some of the smaller cap stuff, some of the risk on type trades, I think we're moving more and more towards those being successful. The Russell 2000's been down and out for 3.5 years. It started to get some momentum and then it pulled back again. But I think we're going to see those types of trades. I do think we're going to see rate cuts, although now all of a sudden today they asked yesterday, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, they did a survey of 50 economists. And the consensus was a 25 basis point rate cut in September. So that's not members of the Fed. That's 50 economists. So that's a survey that they do. And they still felt after the jobs numbers and all that, we're still only going to get a 25 basis point rate cut. And if I go take a look at the CME FedWatch tool, you'll see this has leveled out a little bit. We went a week ago, so last Friday, when everybody pressed the panic button, this got up to a 50 basis point rate cut was at 74%. It's now at 49.5%. So it's pretty much 50-50 now at this point. The market thinks between 25 basis point and 50 basis points. But by Friday and then by Monday, pretty much 100% of the market was convinced, and 100% is the wrong word to use, but the vast majority of the market was convinced one of two things was going to happen. We were going to get a 50 basis point rate cut in the September meeting, or we were going to get an emergency meeting prior to that and get a 50 basis point cut. Now, that could still happen. If we get one more bad data point that's a big miss in the wrong direction, who knows? We see how much the market and retail investors in particular can and do react to just one data point. And it's one of our kind of mantras here on the channel. Never look at just one data point. Never look at one chart. Never look at one indicator, because none of them are perfect. So, you try to put pieces of a puzzle together and come up with the most likely conclusions that you can. But the market will be what the market will be. And no one thing, other than George will talk maybe a little about black swan type events, which, that's a different story, but those are very rare and few and far between. Now, we had one of those in 2020. So,
they close to having one this year too.
Right. And we don't know. You don't know, right? The world, there's a lot of instability, geopolitically speaking, in the world right now. So, if something, on that scale happens, obviously there could be giant reactions to that in the market.
That would be a really good poll question, Tom. This is crazy. People think 70 to 80, 34%. And that's not us speaking. That's the community speaking.
Right. So that's over 100 votes.
Right.
The two that got the most votes. So 68%. 30%, 60 to 70, and 34% in first place, 70 to 80, 18%. Right. So both extremes got 18%. 18% of think that it's going to be higher than 80,000 by September 30th, and 18% think it's going to be lower than 60,000 by September 30th. I think this poll is
So-
very indicative of the confusion that's out there, and I don't blame everybody. Trying to guess, that's only 7 weeks from now. It's getting really hard for these short-term predictions.
I have another poll if you don't mind, Tom.
Absolutely. So let's end this one. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Also, we're at 75 likes. If you are just got here or if you have not yet, we would appreciate it greatly if you would smash the like button. It does help the stream out a lot.
And this
All right,
kind of
what's
goes to what Kevin wrote. Do people think we're going to have a 5% pullback in the stock market or another
5%?
I know the 5% so big. What's a good number?
No, a 5% pullback in the market to me is small.
Okay,
10% is a correction, 20% is a bear market.
Okay, so let's do 20%. It's just a yes or no, and maybe sometime before end of October. I'm just curious. Because if people think that, they have to change, their investment strategy.
Right. So I said, will we have a 20% correction in the next 90 days in the equity markets? Yes or no? So do you think, and that would be bear market territory. 5% happens, that can happen in 3 days. 10% is a full correction. Just that's what these are the definitions. However you want to view it, that's what the definitions are. 10% is correction, 20% is a bear market.
Wait a second. They didn't get changed? A lot of these definitions have been getting changed.
Well,
so I just want to make sure.
I can't speak to the absolute up to the minute definition of these.
I'm on my phone, Barry. I'm sorry. Hey, did you finish your hike, Barry? I'm sure you did, but.
So it's worth noting, looking at this chart, as always, this gold line is where Bitcoin was when the U.S. equity markets closed yesterday. So 100% of the day today, we were above where Bitcoin was yesterday. So Bitcoin had a very nice day of consolidation. So, it's a red candle, but since this washout on Monday, even if we go to now, we're up 23%. We were up as high as 28%. So, I really think there's room to run in this area here. So I've been wrong before and I'll be wrong again. But, if you look at what happened, this is how I'm looking at this. And this is very oversimplified viewpoint. We had a candle wick, kind of a flash crash candle wick on May 1st, down to 56,500. So that was our first kind of crash. From there, we got all the way back up to this green line at around just over 71,000. Then at the beginning of July, right, this was our second flash crash. This time it was even lower, down to 53,500. But yet we got back to our yellow line at 69,000, which was the high from the previous cycle. So we now have had a third flash crash candle wick. This one even lower still. Right, this is the third one. Sorry, let me just see if I can make a... And this one's lower still. So, are we going to start hitting? We were here, then we were here. I don't know. Maybe we're going to do this. But I think there's some room inside of this, even if we're following this pattern. I also think we could have a breakout to the upside. Now I'm going to just say everything and say, of course, it's on the table. We don't know that this bottom will hold. To me, that looked like a really clear bottom. And two things, the volatility index spiking like that, I think was an indication that that's the bottom, and we won't be able to see it, but I'm going to go to the fear and greed index. On that day, we hit, so we see yesterday we were in extreme fear of 20. We got down to 17. So as of Monday, and it's now Friday, but as of Monday, within this 30 days that they track, we went from greed to extreme fear. And 17 was the lowest in, a year and a half. So we hit, record lows here on the fear and greed index. We hit record highs on the volatility index. All of those things. And this is what I'm saying. You start to look at multiple data points. The other, easy data point that I would look at is we closed. So this is the RSI on the 1-day time frame. If you guys can see this, on Monday, this closed at 26 in oversold territory, but intraday. So on the, whatever time frame you're on, there's only one data point. So there's one of these per day. But in the middle of the day, at 9:30 when the Eastern time, when the U.S. equity markets opened, the daily RSI was touching this green line at 21, which is extreme oversold territory. That is this is my little line here. This is when I buy things. If and when we ever get down and hit 21 on this, that happens from time to time, but rarely, and it's extreme. 30 is considered oversold. We hit 21 in the day, and you can see we ran, even by the end of the day, we ran up to 26 or 27, which is still closing in oversold territory. The last time we did that, you can see it was back on June 25th, and we ran all the way up. We didn't quite get to overbought territory, but we made pretty much the full run. So now, one of the key points is going to be, here we are. We kind of got rejected off of 50. So I do, another one of my own personal little rules is good things happen for Bitcoin over 50 on the daily RSI. So can we break out of this and start to, have a run up to the top here? All of that would correspond with maybe that run to 67,000 or 69,000, or who knows, maybe points beyond that, in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. That's what I'm looking at. So obviously there's no guarantee of that, but I think we're starting to have a bunch of different data points that say that's a reasonable possibility. I'm sure somebody could make the opposite argument. Christian said, I don't want to be that guy, but holding Bitcoin is really way better than these dilution machines. I'm so happy I got out of CleanSpark in December and put it into Bitcoin at 30K. So yeah, I mean, from December till now, you'll see Bitcoin's up 45% and CleanSpark's up 4 or 5%. So it's no contest. Now, will there be a period of time? And this tends to be what happens, and we've measured this. So I will have on Monday new charts because, we were measuring the run up in the Bitcoin miners for, about a 3-month period of time. Well, that run up ended, and there's now been a big run down in the Bitcoin miners. So I'm going to take a look at those over the weekend and put all those out on Monday. But, there is no... Yes, George.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Do you think this is now political? Do you think the Bitcoin miners getting beat up and Bitcoin, like that whole thing that happened last weekend, is political?
I mean, politics are in everything at this point. So I would not say, I don't think it's the single biggest driving force of what's going on, but to say that there's no politics in this is probably naive. Everything's turned political. We had the Bitcoin conference, and, for those of you in the U.S., or if you're not in the U.S., we have two major parties here, Republican and Democrat, and the Republicans showed up in force at the Bitcoin conference in Tennessee, including, presidential nominee and former president. We had senators, congressmen, governors. And so the Republicans are very pro Bitcoin, at least in their talking points. Now, I know a lot of people are skeptical and they say, well, that's what they're saying, but I'll believe it when I see it. So I understand that too. But just from a policy standpoint, we've seen, this administration has not been the most crypto-friendly administration. And who to point the finger at, it's hard to say, right? Gary Gensler, who I will tell you, I remember when he was appointed and he was coming in, there was exuberance in the cryptocurrency community. Oh, here's a guy who knows cryptocurrency. He's got a cryptocurrency background. This is going to be beautiful. And guess what? He was so anti-crypto, and, he's conceded on a lot of things at this point. He's also lost a lot of court cases, one of which we'll talk about today, Georgia's XRP. So yes, there's politics in this, and I'm, everybody's got their own politics, and I'm not, saying one side's right and one side's wrong, but there can be no debate that.
No, I think that was the only thing concerning for me is that it seems like it became it's a ballot box issue. Now, like the Bitcoin, the dirty miners and, how they, mess up the grid and they suck out of the energy. I didn't know that it was as political as it is. You know what I mean? I didn't know that.
It's
bad.
It's definitely, it's definitely political. I mean, the energy piece of this. Now, the Bitcoin miners themselves have their own council, and I think they've done a good job of educating investors anyway. They're not going to educate the general population, but what they need to do is educate investors that they are very clean versus most companies. They're some of the cleanest energy companies in the entire publicly traded markets across the, globally. So, you can check that for yourself. That's a subjective statement. But, if you take a look, most of these companies, I don't believe there's any company, not one of the publicly traded companies that we're following, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that uses coal, right? At one point, several years ago, Marathon's main operations was coal. So, most of this, there's a massive amount of hydroelectricity and, a lot of other nuclear electricity and a lot of very green, and they pride themselves on that. Well, I think there's kind of been a mandate. They've been forced into this situation. Also, they've gone around the globe to find a lot of very inexpensive and clean hydroelectricity. That seems to be the winning formula for these Bitcoin miners. So there's an awful lot of that going on. But yes, it's very political. I don't know what's not political anymore.
So looking at this poll time, 20% correction in the next 90 days, 37% yes, 63% no. So a lot of people agree with you, Tom.
Well, that's a pretty significant amount of people think that there's potentially that's a big correction. So
yeah,
that was a good poll. That was not the 80-20 rule. That's a pretty heavy. Still, the majority think no, but that's. So we will end that poll. And Christian, who's a member, thank you for being a member, also said, you're evaluating Bitcoin here, but the miners obviously are not Bitcoin, and they aren't a leverage play. They are a dilutive race to the bottom. So Christian is clearly, I think earlier said, you switched all your money out of the Bitcoin miners into Bitcoin, and that's been a good play so far. But I will tell you, be careful, because this is mirroring the last cycle. In the last cycle, it took, Riot and Marathon were the companies listed on the NASDAQ in the last 4-year cycle. And they were still down like 80% off of their highs at this point in the previous cycle. And they ended up, 40xing, 50xing. Now, I will tell you, I think that is off the table. So anybody expecting a 40 or 50x on these big companies from here, I don't think anybody's expecting that. But, a 3x, a 4x, a 5x on some of the smaller ones, maybe even more than that. I think that is still very possible, but it's going to be, in my opinion, if that happens, it will be later when Bitcoin is deep into the bull part of its run. If Bitcoin has the positive, cycle that it has had in the past. I watched Plan B put out, he went through his model again. And so, and he has a very large, I wanted to watch this because I will tell you, Plan B got a lot of people in the last cycle. And, I blame myself, but I'm one of them. one of the things he said in the last cycle is if Bitcoin does not get to $100,000, then my stock to flow model will have failed. And he was predicting Bitcoin getting to $146,000 by December 31st, 2021. So I got caught up in the hype. I will admit it. I ended up holding way more bags of all of this than I wanted to. So now I heard him explain why. Well, he said that, but technically it's not true. And his margin of error is, so his target price for this, for those of you who care, Plan B's target price for this bull market is $500,000. But here's his margin of, yes, it's but here's what he said. He said, technically, the way he's built the stock to flow model, there's a margin of error, 50% to the downside, 100% to the upside. So he's saying, what I'm really saying is my price target is $500,000. However, within a range on the low end at $250,000 and on the high end at $1 million. So that he's saying if it falls within that range, then his stock to flow model is still valid and it's still working. So the very bottom worst possible case scenario for Plan B's stock to flow model is $250,000. Now, I personally do not think Bitcoin's going to get to that in this cycle, but I bet some of you do think that, even, with this rough little run we've had right now.
What is the model that people use where it goes around in a circle?
That's a great model, and I'm blanking the name of that right now, but right. That has held, not perfect, but that has held very true. And it's something, to sum it up, it's the 4-year cycle. If you look at it as a circle, somewhere 15, 16, 17 months before the halving, if you start accumulating big time, and then somewhere 15 or 16 or 17 months after the halving, if you sell, then you will have done something that resembles buying at the bottom and selling at the top. So, that's in a nutshell. And if you look at the circle, it's not exactly what I just said, but conceptually, that's what it is. And that has held true in, and that is the bull market, bear market cycle. And I'll tell you, I didn't think we were going to have a crypto winter, but we did. We had a brutal crypto winter. I thought Bitcoin had gotten to a point where it would avoid that. I thought maybe the rest of the crypto universe, the altcoins maybe would, but Bitcoin would avoid, a full 70 or 80 or 85% pullback. But we were over, I think we were 70 or 75% pullback. And by some measures, this was actually longer and worse than previous crypto winters. Now, I'm going to say it again. So this is going to be fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So if I'm wrong again, I don't think, I'm going to say once again, I don't think we're going to have a crypto winter after this bull market. I do think we will have a bear market, but I think it's going to be more of a 40% type of a pullback. Maybe, flash crashing down to 50%, but I don't think we're going to have between, a 75 to 85% pullback. But that'll depend on two things. How high do we get? Because if we get an extraordinarily higher than I expect, then that leaves a lot more room for that level of a pullback. And I could just flat be wrong again. And my line of reasoning is not that I love Bitcoin. It's the adoption, the difference in adoption right now between 4 years ago. There's just, you can list the monumental amount of, between the ETFs, between, look at the Bitcoin conference. We never had politicians show up to the Bitcoin conference, and this time it was filled with them. So we have institutional adoption. We're only at the tip of the iceberg on that. Corporate adoption, we really haven't even started seeing corporations. We're just starting to see 3 or 4 corporations start to say, you know what, we're going to borrow some money and buy Bitcoin or put some of our treasury into Bitcoin. So, there's still massive amounts of adoption ahead, but we've had some major benchmark things that we've been waiting for a long time. We got the Bitcoin ETFs. We're in the middle of unwinding this Mt. Gox situation that's been hanging over our head forever. And I don't think we're in the middle. I think we're near the end of that. That's my personal opinion. So, all kinds of reasons to be, I think, bullish on Bitcoin for the rest of this cycle. And I guess it's a little early to start talking about what's going to happen, after the bull market.
Thank you, Andrew. It was called the Bitcoin Circle Chart.
The Bitcoin Circle Chart. Well, that makes sense.
It kind of does.
Right there in the name. It's a circle. All right, so let's do one thing real quick here. Let's see how CleanSpark is reacting. So they're almost back to, they're 1 penny off of where they were at the close. They had pulled back initially. So CleanSpark, no reaction for earnings at all. So they did go down 6% today. They were one of 3 Bitcoin of the big miners that had a 6% down day. They're a little flat on earnings. We go look at that press release, see if anything else jumps out at us. Cash, $129 million. Bitcoin, $413 million. So that's a $500 million. Total current assets, $598 million. So, $500 million in liquidity. This is what I'm saying. CleanSpark is now catching up. For years, Marathon and Riot's balance sheet, forget their business, and all these businesses are different in many ways, but just their balance sheets, they had massive amounts of liquidity. And now CleanSpark is starting to put themselves in that conversation with a $500 million of liquidity. Now, Riot and Marathon are well over $1 billion of liquidity, but you're seeing this is an extremely that and this against, and these are some, I'm glad they're putting this right in the press release. These are some of the things I look for. Total liability, $73 million. So they got a $500 million in liquidity, and total, not just current liabilities, but total liabilities, $73 million. Current liabilities, $67 million. So their current ratio is phenomenal. Their assets to debt, all of this is good stuff. Stockholders' equity at $1.4 billion. Working capital, $531 million. That's what we were just talking about. That's their liquidity. We know they mined a massive amount of Bitcoin. They did lose money. I think all of these companies are going to lose money. So, I will listen to their conference call later and look through their financial statements later. Some of the other numbers that I'm looking for is, did they do a good job of controlling their overhead? How much, one of the things that really agitates shareholders is a lot of non-cash compensation to management. So we'll see how much of that, what was their cost per coin? What's their gross profit margin? So, there's a lot more to look at. How much dilution did they use during this quarter? Now, I expect they used a bunch of dilution because, they're growing rapidly. So a lot of these bigger companies are going to continue, Christian called them a dilution race to the bottom. And, they are diluting. There's no doubt about it. The question is it going to pay off? For a company like CleanSpark, I believe before the end of the year, and let's go to this chart. So here is CleanSpark mined 494 Bitcoin in July. That was an 11% increase month over month from June. They had a 7% increase month over month between May and June. So if we go back to, I'll just go back in time a little bit. If we go back to March, that was the last full month before the halving. CleanSpark mined over 800 Bitcoin. They have stated they expect to get back to mining more than that per month before the end of the year. So this is what I'm looking at. Yes, there's a lot of dilution, but let's say Bitcoin's at $100,000 and CleanSpark's mining, 800 Bitcoin a month. This is the type of equation that's going to allow them to be profitable or very profitable. So if the dilution comes along with, the corresponding increase in the amount of Bitcoin that they mine, then there's a scenario where we're going to get the growth on these, I think. That's the concept. And then in addition to that, obviously, with 6,000 or 7,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet, they're going to get that markup and profitability as well. So while we're here, we'll just take a quick look at July. So there was a couple of standouts in July. So to me, if you look, and I'm just going change month over month, Riot was up 45%. Riot's production was up 45% month over month. And that is not because June was an outlier bad month. June's production was up 19% month over month from May. So a big increase in June, a even more than twice as big increase in July. This is what we've been waiting for. So I've been saying for a long time, not for a long time, a couple of months ago, I kind of said, Riot is one of my big positions, and it's the only one that I have a question mark next to that I am looking at. My words were, I'm putting them on 90 days probation. In the next 90 days, they have said they were going to do, X, Y, Z. If I don't see them making very big progress and doing something that resembles that, I'm going to rethink my position in Riot. But this is what I was expecting. So they did what I wanted them to do. So again, this is not financial advice. For me, I had them on a 90-day probation. Well, 60 days in, I'm already seeing all the things that I thought I was going to see or that I hoped I was going to see. And they're not at the finish line. There's still a bunch of things I think Riot can get better at. They are at 23.3 exahash, so their number of Bitcoin mined per exahash is not competitive with their peers. They need to continue to improve on that, but the number of Bitcoin they're mining is going up dramatically. So, if there's room for improvement, but this is a lot of what I wanted to see. I wanted to see them get this exahash online. I wanted to see this amount of Bitcoin mined go up dramatically. They made a gigantic acquisition in the middle. Of course, they're in the middle of trying to buy Bitfarms, so they increased their target exahash for 2025 from 40 exahash to 56 exahash. That does not include Bitfarms, so that would be on top of that. I personally don't think they're going to get Bitfarms. I've been saying that. I don't believe that's going to happen, but I could be totally wrong. So, which leads me to the other company that I think, had dramatically good performance. Bitfarms was up 34% in July over their June numbers. And Bitfarms was up 21% in June. So they were the leader in June, and they still were up 34% from there. So in 2 months, they went from mining 156 Bitcoin to 253 Bitcoin. So that's exactly what, Bitfarms was in that same, they've been talking about getting this exahash online by June 30th. Now, they did fall a little short. They talked about getting 12, and they're at 11. They tried to kind of explain the difference. They're looking to get to 21 by the end of the year. But these two companies, Riot and Bitfarms, those are the two that it was time for the rubber to hit the road. June was a month they were talking about having certain goals accomplished, June, July, August, and we're seeing, I think, very satisfying results. Bitfarms also put their financial statements out. The market seemed to really like their financial statements. They were up 22% yesterday. Now, it was a green day across the board, but even on a green day where everyone was up huge, Bitfarms was the winner on the day, and I do think it was because people liked their financial statements. A couple of notes out of the Bitfarms financial statements, and I'm going to interrupt myself. We're at 89 likes. If you would be so kind. Yes, we were trying to get to 100. We got to 200 last week. Thanks, everybody, so much for that. And if you would be so kind, if we at least want to try to get to 100 likes. So a couple of things that I thought stood out on Bitfarms financials, and I will be doing a deep dive on Bitfarms. I will be doing a deep dive on Riot as well. So, I'll leave some of that to my videos, but for Bitfarms, they continue to do an excellent job at managing overhead. So some of these companies, I feel like their overhead is spiraling out of control. Bitfarms, I think, is one of the best companies out there at managing their overhead. So I really liked what I saw in their financial statements as far as what their overhead was. Also, they had next to no non-cash compensation. So they did not dilute and give huge amounts of money to management. So those I know are a couple of the things that people looked at. I thought they had really good financial statements. So let me just go to those real quickly because there was a couple of highlights. Okay, revenue up $42 million, down 16% quarter over quarter. But remember, this was the quarter where there was the halving, and up 17% year over year. So, even after the halving, they were still up 17% year over year. Gross margin of 51%. Where's what I'm looking for? Current hash rate of 11.1%, up from 6.5% in Q1. So not quite a double, but a significant increase. So current efficiency, 25 watts per terahash. So we can see in the comments earlier, somebody mentioned Bitfarms is looking to get under 20, or sorry, CleanSpark's looking to get under 22 joules per terahash. So I'll have to go through their numbers, but one of our members had mentioned they're getting rid of machines that are worse than that. So they're really going after efficiency, but Bitfarms has been efficient overall. They've dramatically improved this number, a 26% improvement just over the last quarter. So that's a dramatic improvement in this measure of efficiency. And the other measure that they're very good at, and so is CleanSpark, the number of Bitcoin that they mine per exahash, they're among the leaders in that typically. So they added 220 megawatts. So a lot of good stuff in this report. Somewhere in here, I thought they were positive EBITDA. Let's see if I can quickly find that. Okay, an operating loss of $24 million. Okay, adjusted EBITDA, $12 million. So Bitfarms was actually positive. So that obviously that's a non-financial number, but it's this is an important number to me. So they were positive there. So I think the market liked this. This is, and again, we'll do a much deeper dive on this. I just wanted to touch on this, and we just got over 100 likes. So thank you very much, everybody, for that. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
And so you can see I just flipped back to the 15-minute Bitcoin chart, and we're still hovering around 60,000. So, and I'm okay if that's sideways all weekend. That's what was happening. The weekends were boring for the first several months of the ETFs being created. All the action was during the week, and then the weekends were boring, and that was, to me, that was just fine. So if we spend the weekend consolidating, that will give... I'm going to go to another, if I go to the 4-hour, the 4-hour RSI, if this can reset a little bit over the weekend, I'm looking for this maybe to, pull. Sorry. Get rid of this. If this can bounce off of 50, and that would be a little bit of a reset, and that would leave some more room to the upside for Bitcoin to run. So, again, no one indicator means anything, but, a little bit of sideways consolidation over the weekend, I think would be a very healthy thing to maybe set us up to have a good week next week. To me, the worst weeks are the weeks where Bitcoin runs to the moon over the weekend and then Monday morning starts to pull back. Because the Bitcoin miners, the equities tend to react negatively to that. Even if Bitcoin is way up from Friday to Monday, if it's headed in the wrong direction on Monday, the Bitcoin miners suffer. So I would rather see it consolidate over the weekend and make its run during the week. We can also look at the ETFs yesterday. So yesterday, August 8th, the ETFs had $194 million of inflow. So, it's worth noting, remember there was panic on Friday and Monday. Well, look at the ETFs. Friday, this was 1 week ago, $237 million of outflow. Fidelity had huge outflow on that day, even more. Fidelity and ARK Invest had bigger outflow than Grayscale. So Friday was giant red day. Monday, 168 million of outflow. Tuesday, 148 million of outflow. So that was a rough rough run. In the middle of this, Bitcoin did bottom out and start to run up. By yesterday, we had $194 million of inflow, and you can see most of that was BlackRock. So $157 million of inflow from BlackRock, $118 million of inflow here from, I can't even see who this is. Who's BTCW? That's a outlying gigantic inflow for them. Is that the Grayscale mini trust?
I don't know, Tim.
I'm gonna just see. Oh, that's Wisdom Tree. So for whatever reason, Wisdom Tree that might have been their best day that they've ever had. So it's also worth noting inside of all of this, Grayscale is approaching 400,000 Bitcoin down from when they switched from a trust to an ETF. So their outflow is something like 385,000 Bitcoin. And so let me just... So if I go, this is all the ETFs. I think this might be a 1-day lag. But you can see, Grayscale came into this when all these guys had zero or just their seed money. Grayscale had 620,000 Bitcoin. They now have 236.9, call it 237,000 Bitcoin. BlackRock has 347,000 Bitcoin in their ETF. So that is significantly more than Grayscale. And you'll see Fidelity is catching them. So I expect sometime in the next month or two, maybe sooner, Fidelity will pass Grayscale as well. Grayscale has, at number 7, you will see the Grayscale Bitcoin Mini Trust. So they spun off 10% of their big ETF and made a new ETF with a much smaller fee. So, as a result of the fact that they seeded that with 10% of the Grayscale, this is already the number 7. They're bigger than VanEck. They're bigger than Valkyrie, Invesco, Franklin, Wisdom Tree. So that's what Grayscale's doing. But you can see that, there's the two giants here. Obviously, BlackRock, as we all assumed, was going to be the monster in this space, and they're already there, and they're running away from the field. But Fidelity is a gigantic company as well, so I do think they will be the second biggest, and right now they're the third, but I think they will pass Grayscale. And a bunch of these look like they're going to survive, but time will tell. So one other... Let me get to this article, and then we'll take a look at this. Oh, first, so we talked about the worst day, and at the beginning of this stream, for those of you who weren't here, I said, we had in the last week, we had one of the worst days ever, and we had one of the best days ever. So we looked at Monday, and for those of you who weren't here, the volatility index, it was the third biggest spike in the history of the volatility index on Monday. So Monday was a disaster, not just for Bitcoin, but for the entire equity markets, and not just in the US, really globally. But here you will see that yesterday, Bitcoin's 12% price rally on Thursday, which was yesterday, was the biggest since February of 2022. So, that's coming up on not quite 2.5 years ago. So that was the best one day for Bitcoin in the last couple of years. And that is, let's go back to the one day. That was this green candle right here. So you can see from the bottom on Monday, and this, by the way, the bottom of this was almost simultaneous. Bitcoin was just almost down to 49,000, almost exactly simultaneously with the opening bell of the equity markets in the US. So that opening bell basically rang the bottom for Bitcoin. It was up from there. We're up 20 something percent on the week from there, 12% of which was in one day, making it the best day in the last almost 2.5 years. But that is not what I was looking for.
Woo!
What's happening, George?
Nothing.
This is what I was looking for. Bitcoin dominance soars as altcoins struggle. Bullish sign for Bitcoin, question mark? So, Bitcoin dominance and Tether dominance chart underlie Bitcoin's strength. You can see, and I will go, instead of looking at their chart, I will go to this. If you look at Bitcoin dominance today, yesterday was a new high. Today is another new high. Now, this is not an all-time high, but you have to go back years. Of this cycle, I mean, this is a high. We'll go back. You got to go all the way back to April of 2021, over 3 years ago, coming up on 3.5 years ago. And the crypto universe was a very different place back then. So this is a 3.5 year high in the Bitcoin dominance, and you can see it just keeps going up. So, for those of you hoping for altcoin season, it seems like still, this Bitcoin dominance bodes well for Bitcoin. I think there's a lot of room to the upside. Obviously, if you're into the altcoins, this could be some of the ideal time to be accumulating altcoins. Not financial advice. I am not the go-to altcoin person, although I do intend to, and I have started to do my research on that, and I intend to do a lot more. It's a gigantic universe. I'm trying to stick to the ones that matter. It's very hard to find these tiny micro caps that, there are people that catch 50Xs and 100Xs, but, I don't even know how to go look for those. But I do think even for some of the big names, they are down dramatically. They've been, you can see with Bitcoin dominance at this, 3.5 year high, the altcoins in general have had a tough run. So let's go to the list.
I got to leave in 5 minutes, son.
Okay, you got it. Even Ethereum down 14% in the last week. So some of these, we got to, let's see, XRP. So XRP settled down, but they had a nice run. The stable coins obviously should be next to zero, and they are. They're almost zero. Binance was down 8%. Solana is everybody's new all-time favorite coin. So that actually did better than the field, down 1.5%. But if you go down the list, here, Avalanche down 20%, Shiba down 16%, Polkadot almost 18%, Bitcoin Cash 26%, Chainlink 13%. So, and this is just the last 7 days. You'll see a lot of red. Now, there's some outliers. There's some that jumped. But in general, my point of all this is that right now we are in maximum Bitcoin dominance. We're at a 3.5 year high, and it's kind of a breakout. You can see, even going back to April, we got up here. We didn't quite retest it here. We retested it here. We retested it here. And now we've broken out. So I don't know where this goes to, but it looks like Bitcoin dominance is running. I'm jumping around. I'm just trying to get to everything on my list here. So I want to get to yesterday. This definitely was a big, for as much of an overreaction as we had on Friday to the jobs report. We got the jobless claims, which is a weekly report, yesterday. And this seemed to be the catalyst to, ease a little bit of people's panic. Weekly jobless claims fall to 233,000, less than expected, and a positive sign for the labor market. So this was only the absolute tiniest bit of positive news. But what I think people were worried about is after last week's jobs report, they were worried that, we were going to follow that up with a nightmare jobless number and things were going to start to spiral. So just a couple things I want to point out. First time filing for jobless benefits came to a seasonally adjusted 233,000 for the week, a decline of 17,000 from the previous week's upwardly revised level, and lower than the estimate of 240. So we estimated 240. It came in at 233. I mean, that is, that's insignificant. It's inside of the margin of error. This could get adjusted next week above this number for all we know. I think the key here was the market was worried we were going to start to get nightmare data point after nightmare data point, and we didn't. This number came in okay, just fine, beat by a little bit. But the other thing that I think is important to look at, while the top line number helped allay some fears, the level of continuing claims, which run a week behind, edged up to 1.875 million, the highest since November 27th of 2021, which was just within a few weeks of when Bitcoin peaked. So, this is a multi-year high. So, this was not some kind of phenomenal report, but the market rallied. It was just looking for an excuse. This was the excuse that it got. It rallied big time off of this. And then, so let's look at where we ended up today. So the S&P ended up a half a point today. The Dow 0.1. The NASDAQ was up a half a point. The Russell ended up in the red, down 0.17. So almost flat on the day. So after a huge up day yesterday in all of these equity markets, it was followed up with, with the S&P and the NASDAQ, a nice up day as well. So if we just switch this to the S&P 500, we're still off of our highs. So we still, we peaked. This was in the middle of June 16th. But you can see yesterday we had a big green day. And then, so that was Thursday and that was Friday. And I think you're going to see the Qs, which is the NASDAQ, is going to look the same. Big green day yesterday, big green day today. So, moving in the right direction, but way off of. So, we've already had on the NASDAQ from the top to the bottom, we already had over a 15% correction. So will we rally back to these old highs, or are we going to retest the lows and or go lower? George, we got to talk before you go. I know you're on your way out, so let's talk about XRP. And this was Thursday. XRP jumped 17% as Ripple SEC case ends. So I will say, George, you pointed this out to me, and then as I've read into this further, this was not technically the end of this case. And what's the first thing you said to me? Do you remember?
Yeah, I know what I said. That's why I sold half of what I had.
So there was, and you caught better than a 17% bounce. You caught a really big bounce on this.
Oh yeah, I sold. Oh my goodness! I think that one day was up almost 24%. Is what I sold, like 23.52 or something like that.
So just to clarify for you, I'll speak on your behalf. Correct me if I'm wrong. You have two piles of XRP. One that you're letting sit for all time. Another one that you bought low and you just sold high.
Yes.
So.
And it's funny that it took this many days for this to really play out. So I am a member of another group where we just talk about XRP, and these guys are Ripple gods. And they believe Ripple is the second coming. And it's insane. I mean, the whole Ripple, I don't go into it, but I know a lot about the Ripple network and how it works and all the projects that are on it. It's incredible, Tom. It's incredible. And it's so cheap to use. So when you see something go up that dramatically, there's got to be a pullback. There just has to be. And it's pulled back just now to like 58, 59 cents. I don't know. I have to look at it again.
And so this
You know
is
what I mean?
this is that take profits type of a rule that, you know,
Nothing goes up forever.
Nothing goes up forever, and it's hard to ever criticize anybody for taking profits. If your plan is to, there's all different ways to invest, but at some point, if you're not taking profits, then you actually never make any money, right? So there has to be, however long it is, there has to be an exit strategy.
So I don't know if it's all FUD, what's going on with, the SEC is going to take them back and they're going to bring a different lawsuit. And this is getting so old and so ridiculous. It's not even funny.
Right. So the first thing that came out is it is highly likely the SEC is going to appeal this. So, when this news first hit, my thought was, the SEC has lost so many things. It seems like, they're giving up, but they're not. Indications
They
are
got endless money, Tom. They got endless money.
That's right.
There's nothing. That's the problem. You can't just give somebody endless money with an ego, okay? And say, and slams his fist on the ground. Hey, this is a security. You know what I mean?
So they're not giving up on that. They're not giving up, or so it would seem. They are not going to give up on trying to say that XRP is a security. This judge ruled to the contrary, and this is a final order, but it does look like it will be appealed. But I wanted to go to one more thing, because while all this is happening, something else is going on with XRP. And let me find that if you give me just 1 minute.
So just as you do that, I'm in a Discord community where they try to hack XRP.
Oh.
And all we do is spend the weekend trying to hack the system. And when you find a security flaw, it's amazing. I mean, there's like almost 10,000 quote unquote ethical hackers in there.
Right, but those are white hat or white cap, whatever you call it, hackers that are trying to that's to try to ensure the security of the network. So you want those people.
They're the only, that's the only coin that I know that does that. Maybe there's other coins that do it, but it's a contest. And it's really neat how they do it. It's really pretty cool. And then this is where you get other, programmers that know how to program XRP. They just keep trying to hack it time in and time again, and you win prizes and you come up with different use case scenarios for XRP and how to use them. It's really good. It's pretty interesting. And I mean, the use case scenarios that XRP has is unbelievable, and that's why the SEC is doing this. Take everything off the table. And why they're doing it is they're scared of XRP.
They view it as a threat, in your opinion.
Yes, it's a threat. Absolutely. You can make all fraud go away with cryptocurrency in general.
So here's what Ripple is doing, and Ripple is the company, the creator of XRP. They are the XRP ledger. This article came out today. Ripple begins testing its stablecoin on Ethereum and XRP ledger. So Ripple intends to get into the stablecoin business in a big way. The stablecoin, this goes on to talk about how this is now a $160 billion market cap. And most of that, we can go back to the list, is two stablecoins. You've got Tether, which is now $115 billion, and USDC, which is $34 billion. That's gone down, although I think they got big plans as well. So XRP is looking to get into this business. So let me get back to that. They're basically all right, George, have a great week. I'm about to wrap it up in a couple of minutes as well, so have a fantastic weekend. Thanks for joining us.
See members on Tuesday. Thanks, everyone. So I find this, there's,
you know, this equation, this $160 billion of stable coins, essentially, you know, and interest rates are dropping a little bit, so it's not going to be quite as profitable, but essentially you can just park this. Mostly what Tether does is park this in, you know, treasury bills and just mint money on this. So Ripple is looking to get into this game. Now, you know, I assume they're going to try to do this in a way that in no way, shape, or form, or at least minimally competes with themselves. That's the only question that I would have on what they're doing here. But, you know, a couple of big pieces of news from Ripple / XRP over the last few days. So I'm just looking at my list to see if I missed anything, but I think we pretty much got through everything on my list. We've got a bunch of earnings that are coming out. We just got CleanSpark earnings today. We got Bitfarms earnings yesterday. We already got Riot and Marathon. Let me just go to that chart and we'll go through. So they delayed a day. They were supposed to go yesterday. This is CleanSpark. They went today instead. TerraWolf on August 12th. Cypher on August 13th in the morning, and Hut on August 13th in the morning. So we have 3 more earnings reports coming next week. I will be doing some deep dives on a bunch of these, so you can stay tuned for those. And of course, for the members, we do a members-only video, or every members-only live stream, that is, every Tuesday after the market closes. And of course, we are here every Friday, whether it's a good week or a bad week or whatever the case may be. We're here every Friday for everybody. So I want to thank everybody so much for joining us on the live stream. Special thanks to all the members is much appreciated. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation, and I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. And for the members, we'll see you on Tuesday. And for everybody else, we will see you next Friday. Thank you.